fine.
Okay, good.
I came home at about 10 o'clock and it was like leaning way over. And then when I got back, when I went to leave the house, they had closed everything down. So,
Good deal.
yeah, now they got the pole in, so now they're hooking all the wires up to the new pole. So,
Yeah, they took it out early this morning, Tom.
okay. I knew something hard had to hit it because the winds, there wasn't enough wind to do that. So,
Nah, 2-1, the driver wasn't paying attention, or I don't know how the heck he hit it.
I got your Legion card, Matt. So,
Thank you.
yeah, whenever I see you or you see me, it's in my Durango. So
One of these months.
I know you can always get in anyway. So, but yeah. Yeah, we hit 100% quota, so that we look good in the eyes of the state. So,
Good.
yeah. So hopefully we'll have a parade. So that would be good.
Yeah.
Get people back in the spirit and together.
Yeah, parade's on.
Good.
Got a text message from Ed Kreitz today. The parade's on.
Okay, good. So that's always it's one of the largest parades in Lake County. So
He gave me something today. He wants me to read at the council meeting on Monday.
okay, yeah. We just got to make sure nobody tries to sneak in. Imagine that. So. I'm kind of hoping, board, that we get the seniors get to meet again. So I haven't think.
Okay, we got to get this started because they only have so much time. So I will go to the finance committee meeting at 7 p.m. to review of RFPs. I believe that MS Consultants is first. I believe Tony Unrinker, are you the only person that's speaking? Is there others that are speaking, sir?
Ed, Tony just popped off and came. I'm looking for him in the waiting room, but Shannon and Aaron are here and they are both on.
Oh,
so.
with MS as well? Okay, sorry guys. I wasn't sure.
I think you're on mute.
Yep. All right. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think maybe Tony might have had a connection issue, but we can go ahead and get started. Obviously want to respect all of your time. Am I able to share my screen?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Second. Okay, you guys have the presentation up there?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I guess Tony will interrupt me if he joins as we start. But first of all, thank you so much for having us here this evening. We really appreciate your time and consideration. As I said, I'm Shannon Fergus. I'm with MS Consultants. I'm the operation leader for urban planning across all of our markets. We have MS Consultants has 9 offices offering 80 services. We have more than 300 professionals, almost 200 of which are here in the state of Ohio. I'm located in Columbus. We also have other planners in Cleveland, Youngstown, and Akron. And that is where the majority of our planning work takes place, is in the Northeast Ohio region, both Cleveland and I think that Tony is. Tony, are you back on? No, okay. So that's a little intro to MS Consultants. We're a full service firm. One thing I love about being a planner at kind of a mid-sized engineering firm is, we're all here to support each other. If I have any engineering or architecture questions in the midst of my, planning endeavors, folks, are just a cubicle or office away, and it really roots our planning in reality. Allows us to ensure we're not really suggesting anything that we know isn't feasible from an engineering standpoint. So I'll quickly introduce our team. We've got Tony Reicher, who is up in Cleveland, sales director for Northeast Ohio. Previously was with ODOT. I'm Shannon Fergus. I'm your project manager on this project, urban planner. I've been with MS for 2.5 years, and I have 10 years of planning experience. We have Erin Moriarty, who you'll hear from as well on our team. She's the lead planner and will be leading community engagement and urban design on this project. And then also with us, we have 2 sub-consultants on this project. We have Chris McGill with Ice Miller. He's really a key part of our team. He'll be providing market analysis and business traction and some final kind of funding recommendations once any area plans or priority development plans are in place. And then I think most importantly on our team for you all, just due to the unique nature of your zoning code with the referendum zoning, we have Sean Suter with ZoneCo, previously with Calfee Zoning. Sean is really going to assist us in analyzing your zoning code as we talk about different redevelopment strategies along the corridor. And we really think that's a key part of kind of getting development moving on the corridor is the zoning constraints that you all currently experience. So first of all, I just want to say, I only have a slide on here about zoning, but I do want to also note that with Chris on our team, we're really, and I'm going through just key points on this. We were told to kind of keep this to 10, 15 minutes. So I'm not going through our entire proposal. You have that in front of you. I really want to hit on the fact that our approach to this project is going to be very market driven and very using Chris McGill's expertise. And then also very driven by understanding exactly what needs to happen within your zoning code to attract the type of development that you and your residents would like to attract. So this is kind of, you probably already know this about why zoning, but I think these are slides that are important for your citizens when we're going through this project. And one is neighborhood protection, and you guys have that down. You have referendum zoning. Resident interests are very protected in Wickliffe. Zoning code inflates and increases property values and elevates quality of life. What referendum zoning does for you guys right now, unfortunately, is hinders a little bit of economic development, because for every project you want to do, you're having to go back to the citizens. And I can only imagine, not only the fact that developers probably, try it once and then never come back, but might not even be looking. They might just think, there's just somewhere else in Northeast Ohio we can go. So it's really important to be able to have a zoning code that attracts new businesses while protecting resident interests, helps direct developers on what you want them to do, and create strength in numbers along your corridor, right? Folks like to co-locate. Folks want to be where the action is at. If one area development is making money on one end of Euclid, most likely another one can make it in the middle and around the other end. So a big part of what we're going to do is look at, if you all, I know that there's conversations in Wycliffe about whether, you might be able to do away with referendum zoning, but our idea is that if you can't, we would like to create a zoning policy or a zoning overlay that is easy to implement, that your citizens will appreciate because of the public engagement that this plan will do with them, which Erin will talk about in a minute here. So that even if you will have referendum zoning in this corridor, you might be able to have a little bit more flexible policies. And again, Sean and Chris are not speaking on these slides, but I wanted to save enough time for Q&A so you can ask them plenty of questions about that as we keep going. Erin, I'll flip it over to you and just let me know when to move forward in the slide.
Sure, thanks, Shannon. So obviously, in addition to our other planning process tasks that we have identified throughout our proposal, we have a number of public engagement identified. And so I just want to hit on the goal of public engagement, right, is to follow a kind of cadence of events. So the first step would be to gather intel from as many community members as possible. Coming from a community with referendum zoning, I would expect that probably the public is fairly used to being involved in certain city planning or zoning processes. So whether or not referendum zoning continues in the future or not, the first step is just to gather intel from as many people as possible. That would then lead to community-led strategies throughout the strategic plan so that people can see their own ideas in the plan. Ideally, that would mean that if we are attracting a certain kind of development along Euclid Avenue, that the community would support that development because they would feel that they were involved from the get-go and brought along in the process. And so they really have that sense of buy-in in that strategic plan and development. Then as development is built, they see their ideas come to fruition, whether or not they requested a certain setback, or they want to see bike racks next to each development, or they want to see retail on the first floor and apartments above, or maybe they don't. They want to see something completely different. Regardless, if you start with the public, their views should be reflected in the end product. And then that goes to increase their own quality of life. So obviously, neighborhoods are protected. We think the majority of your residents will be mostly unaffected as far as abutting neighbors to some of these larger developments that might happen. But overall, quality of life will likely increase with new restaurants and coffee shops within walking distance and some more retail and just a more pedestrian-friendly, biker-friendly community that people want to spend their time in and come back to after graduation and things like that. So trying to create that kind of community that your residents love calling home. So in order to accomplish those goals, we do have a couple different strategies for engagement. The first one that we like to hit as often as possible is to meet people where they already are. So we understand that not a lot of community members, people are busy. They have soccer practice, night class, all sorts of things happening in their lives. And we would like to meet people where they want to be. So if there's a community festival, a farmer's market, or anything that draws a large crowd, once crowds are, again, please, allowed in the world, then we like to meet them there. We set up a little pop-up tent. We just kind of pull people in one-on-one. We're able to have those conversations to answer any kinds of questions and really explain the process in detail, and then have some engagement with them in person. So we have in-person activities, and then we also replicate as often as possible with our online activities, which have obviously been key over the past years. So here's a couple examples. This is the planning pop-up where we set up a pop-up tent. We have some maps, some life-size maps, some sticky dots. People can vote on the priorities that they'd like to see. So we've done this in several communities for the height of housing, whether or not you want to allow an accessory dwelling unit in someone's backyard, whether you want to see benches and trees in your downtown, or bike lanes and other kinds of parking arrangements. So we can ask any slew of questions. And let's go to the next one, Shannon. We also would like to facilitate a SWOT analysis, either with a steering committee or with the public, where we, again, help them identify areas that they would like to see change in the future, and then other areas they want to see preserved and retained, and really hold on to that character of Wickliffe that is so important to the community. So we kind of walk them through this strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats exercise, and that will then lead to those community-driven strategies that we were talking about, including in our plan. Again, we have our online activities. So some surveys that we've been able to do online can even pinpoint the location of people that are taking the survey, which will help identify if we've missed any neighborhoods en masse. And it just kind of reinforces the idea that we are reaching the whole community. Again, we have examples where we can ask about different amenities, such as in a park or different housing styles. So it sometimes is even easier to get people's involvement online because they can kind of take their time and think about it and get to vote on what they think truly reflects the future that they'd like to see in their community. And then also our websites are used to house any sorts of drafts of documents, presentations that we make to the steering committee, agendas ahead of time, public meeting announcements and presentations. They all get uploaded to the website. It's very mobile friendly. You can view the whole thing on your phone. And that way people that either are out of town and can't make it to an in-person engagement, or if we continue from working remotely, and people can still engage with the plan and voice their opinion just via online digital engagement. And then the last point is that at the end of all this engagement, we don't just kind of say, see you later, here's your plan. We really do take the time to think about the results, to quantify those into easily understood charts and graphics that will help to illustrate what the results were from that community engagement. We can write you a 40-page engagement memo. We can write you a 2-page engagement menu. It just really depends on what you'd like to see and what is the most useful for you as a tool. But then ultimately, this engagement report fully supports future funding applications, so that you can show, if you're applying for funding to, I don't know, to include a new park in your downtown area, then you can show that that's what the public supported, you know, if and will they did support it and vote for it in person or digitally. You have those numbers quantified, and you can prove to funding applications that it is supported by the community, and that is why you're applying for funding.
Thanks, Erin. So again, just to recap, I think that, you know, the 3 things that are unique about our approach is the strong emphasis on community engagement, which I think is incredibly important due to the fact that you have referendum zoning. You need the community to be on board with what you're trying to do with those changes in zoning, and this process is gonna help that happen. The technical market analysis that we would be providing is also very key. It's important in a region, you know, you're outside a large city, you know, you have a lot of competition. It's important to do a true market analysis to understand what types of businesses you might be lacking, which you can attract, which would like to locate. That's really important. And then obviously the expert review of the zoning code. So, you know, once we've done the market analysis, we've done the community engagement, you know, that we're then looking at what needs to change in your zoning code and providing you that information. So those are the inputs. The outputs are the, you know, concrete zoning recommendations, concrete strategies for the future. And really, these ideas will support, you know, future funding applications should you go after them for various projects around the corridor. So with that, I think I will throw it over to Tony if you're back.
Yeah, I'm here, Shannon. Thank you very much. And I do apologize for, as I'm sure you've heard before, some technical difficulties getting into this era of the virtual presentations. But with that said, my name is Tony Reicher. I'm the regional director. I'm sure some of you recognize the last name from the area, born and raised in the Collinwood area. As I've told a couple of the people involved, our first house we did a look at was on Rockefeller. We decided for another house up the street. But with that said, I'm one of the reasons, along with Shannon and Erin, and knowing how skilled they are at this, that we want to bring these skills to you. I am Northeast Ohio Regional Director. We have about 100+ people, not only within our 3 branches in Youngstown, Cleveland, and Akron. I also am able to help out with 32 years experience, vast majority with ODOT, but also local government in the city of Cleveland and also in the city of Strongsville. So I really do believe that Wickliffe is growing up in the area, not far from the area. I know what you guys need. Hopefully we'll be able to help you out. And listening to the presentation upside down, sort of. I'm excited to hopefully be able to help you. And we did bring our 2 sub-consultants on to ask any questions or answer questions you may have. And I won't bring up that bad umpire call in the softball league I played at in Wickliffe at Gindra Park, which cost us the championship game, but that was only about 40 years ago. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Maria. Did you start the meeting off? Or any questions for us or our team? Again, we have both of our sub-consultants on the phone with us also.
I think you're on mute.
See, I have such technical difficulty today. Sorry, guys. Yes, thank you so much. Really appreciate the presentation. And I'm just going to open it up to the group. Does anybody have any questions for these folks? No?
Good.
I got one.
Go
Good.
ahead, Joe.
Oh, yeah, I just want to say it's nice to see Tony. You're from the area, so you kind of got an idea of what we need, which is important that you're familiar with it. And, that's very important, I feel. But thank you. Good presentation. That's all.
Yeah, I guess I just have a quick one, unless anybody else is going to jump in. We don't have too much more time, but I guess I'm wondering, I mean, I love the community engagement. I think that's all really important to us. And I think that would be, a great way to start this whole sort of plan trajectory. But so what happens at the end of this? So you basically give us a plan, having sort of touch base with the citizens, you give us a plan after you've looked at the zoning. Well, what exactly can you bring with respect to moving forward with that plan? I mean, can you guys help us? You can't help us with grants, or you can't help us direct us to grants or developers or, any of that stuff. It just pretty much stops at the plan, right?
No. I mean, so we have a lot of experience. We act as the community planner and engineer for many communities throughout Northeast Ohio and around the Pittsburgh area. So we have a lot of experience helping communities kind of walk through, the next steps in their plan. And honestly, for me, that's the most exciting part of planning. I don't like to just plan to plan. We like being able to work on things with our communities. For example, in Canfield, Ohio, we've walked them through the process of creating a CIC, creating a CRA. They had an old CRA that needed to kind of be revamped. We're kind of in that process. You guys, I think, are a little bit further along than Canfield in that, I think you guys probably already use tips, things like that. But we work on that. We also do tons of grant writing for our clients. And then, that's a big part of having Chris McGill and Sean Suter on the team are to help in that implementation. So obviously we the planners can help any additional plans that need to happen, help with funding applications. I actually have a unique thing that I set up special improvement districts across the state as well, which, this is kind of a prime area potentially for that. But maybe I'll let Chris and Sean Suter talk a little bit about how they can kind of take the plan forward after it's done, both from a market standpoint and then also in terms of zoning.
Yeah, I could start.
Just
I promise I've got a bigger role than just saying you're on mute in this meeting tonight, which I'm 2 for 2 on that so far. So I will not do it a third time. Somebody else is gonna have to jump in. But that's a great question, because oftentimes the fear of these plans is it's going to sit and collect peace. And sounds like we have a dog. And what we try to do with the funding process is we'll make recommendations for what we know that the plan says. So here's the plan and here's how it should be funded or financed locally, state level, federally. But then we provide a playbook that shows you for all these other things that happen, or when you need to call an audible, per development activity, per level of government, here's what you need to look for. Here are the programs that are out there. So you get a menu that complements the things that you already know you're going to do, that can prepare you for the things that you're not quite sure of that you'll need to do today. So that's one of the areas. And then we like to provide contacts of the agencies and who you're going to be connecting with, how you get that process started, because all these funding programs are different. They require a different level of effort. They require a different level of attention and expertise. So we want to try to make that as easy as possible. So we're not giving you some funding strategy you have no idea how to execute. So that's really important. Then I think the other question on the developer side, and Sean can elaborate on this if you'd like, but really infiltrating those networks is important, because if we're talking about industrial manufacturing, there are a lot of groups and associations and supply chain entities you can connect to that can help your recruitment effort, your attraction effort really sing. So that's a big part of what we're doing, is how you're going to sort of block and tackle your way to getting into those networks in your attraction strategy.
Terrific. And I know we're really short on time. I know we're probably going to, I'm sorry, I've got quite the dog kennel here, guys. We're going to have to cut it probably short at this point, but we really appreciate your time.
Maria, it's okay. Randy has a quick question. I think he can ask.
Oh, okay, great.
When you guys brought up referendum zoning, is it easier for you to do your job with or without referendum zoning?
I can make a quick comment on that. We do our job no matter what the zoning process is. It's really about the end user and the developer. So what is easier for them? And if whether it's referendum zoning or any other sort of hurdle that extends the process in certainty, a lot of these manufacturers, industrial users, office developers, residential developers want certainty. And if that certainty is threatened by that type of zoning process, then, and that's part of the reason why the stakeholder engagement process is so important, because there are in the private sector some entities that might be threatened by that because they're not sure that the site is development ready. So that's just a quick thought.
All right, does anybody have any more questions for them? If not, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And move on to the OHM advisors. Pardon me if I say your last name wrong. Is it Damani?
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks. I'm just turning all my mic and my video back on. Appreciate you recognizing our team. Arthur, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Good evening, everyone.
And we logged on just at the end there, so apologize if we jumped into the other Zoom.
It's okay.
So do a quick share screen here. Let me get things up. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, I guess we'll kick this off here. Thank you for having us. My name is Aaron Domini. I'm with OHM Advisors. I'm one of the partners and principals with the firm, and appreciate you giving us a chance to chat with you tonight briefly about this project. I know it's been a long time in the development, and here we are, be able to get a chance to talk with you about how we think our team fits this project well. And I guess we wanted to kick off our first 15 minutes just talking about our team, and give a quick introduction to myself and also Arthur. We're both working as kind of co-project managers on this project. I've been a planner for over 20 years, both in the public and private sector. So I've been on the development side of things on the public sector as a public planner, but also a private consultant, and had also turns in academia and the nonprofit world as well. So I've been doing this for quite some time, and kind of bring, I think, both perspectives to this project, both the public and private. And I want to give Arthur a quick chance to introduce himself.
And good evening, everybody. My name is Arthur Schmidt. I'm a project manager and planner with OHM Advisors. Been with OHM just about 5 years now. Previous to that, I had 5 years working at the city of Cleveland in their planning department as part of their planning commission. And also I currently sit as our Northeast Ohio APA Cleveland section director.
Thanks, Arthur. We have a little bit bigger team behind us. I know one of these folks who's a good friend of mine, Chris McGill, you just talked to. We didn't ask Chris to join us because we knew you'd be talking with him, and we wanted to give us kind of a chance to focus in a little bit more on our team. And one of our other key team members is Pete DeSalvo with DDA Market Research, who we have in the proposal as a kind of an add in to the team, depending on what we go with the extra services to look at the full city. But we've worked with Chris and Pete for a number of years. I've known Chris for almost 20 years and Pete almost as long as well. So we worked together quite some time doing projects just like this. So that's our complete team that we're kind of bringing to the project now. A little bit about our organization. We are an AEP firm, not unlike the last firm you talked to, architecture, engineering, planning. We have about 550 team members and growing. We have offices throughout the Midwest, in Ohio, Michigan, and Kentucky, and now Indiana. And so we keep growing, and some of our cool accolades there at the bottom, a little bit about our accolades through APA, through Heritage Ohio, and other organizations. Quick look at where we are. We have 2 offices pretty close to you in Cleveland and Akron, and Arthur's based out of our Cleveland office and lives not too far from this area as well. And as he noted, has spent a lot of time working up in the Cleveland market. I work out of the Columbus office. One of the things I wanted to quickly highlight was just the depth of our team. Looking at this project requires multidisciplinary perspectives, not only planning and urban design, landscape architecture, but engineering and also architecture as well. We know some of the sites you're looking at, specifically school sites, require a little bit of that lens as well. And when we get into actually developing the sites and understanding how to put together development programs, redevelopment scenarios, we lean on our architecture team to also help us with those. So I think that makes us very holistic and brings a nice perspective to the project as well. So, that's enough about our team. We wanted to talk a little bit about you guys and talk about our understanding of the project. So there are some things that we gleaned from the RFP and then doing some additional research. We have been watching, following along on the videos online as you guys have continued to evolve the project and kind of listening to the dialogue. And so we kind of understand how we got to where we are with you on that journey. I think first and foremost is really the need to understand both public and private sector perspectives. That's really important because when we look at redevelopment sites and we look at how to reposition the corridor, it's really important that you bring both those lenses to the project. So that's something that our team brings. I talked about the balanced team of kind of planning, architecture, engineering, urban design. That's another perspective that we bring and I think is really valuable. So we're able to take this all the way through. Arthur, do you want to kind of talk through these points? That'd be helpful.
There we go. Sorry. As we were looking through the RFP and kind of following this along with you, some of the things that we feel are necessary for this project is we really need to make sure that we're creating a development plan that's moving things forward. And part of that is making sure that we're clearly understanding where new development is being located, where new development can occur, and where there are opportunities for redevelopment along the corridor. We know that there's some pockets where kind of that reinvestment can reignite some of the existing businesses and buildings along the corridor. And then we know that there are also opportunities where new investment and new development is necessary. And all of that needs to be market-based. We want to make sure that we're setting this in market realities. We don't want to put out a plan that shoots for the stars, but it's not realistic. It's something that is unattainable. So we really want to make sure that everything that we're talking about, everything that we're developing as part of this is all based in market realities. The other piece of this is just understanding how to adaptively reuse some of the sites along the corridor. Knowing from the RFP and the discussions, one of the school sites being an important piece to that. So what are some of the options that are available to reuse that school site and redevelop it? And then mostly, or lastly, I should say, and also just as critically is, how do we strategically engage the stakeholders, both internally, both locally and then externally as well, who can really influence the outcome of the plan. We really want to make sure that these stakeholders feel involved, feel part of the planning process, feel heard, and are trusted throughout this, so that way they can help indicate and help plan out this space and work towards the implementation of this plan so it's not sitting on the shelf.
Thanks, Arthur. And Maria, that was a strategic pass to Arthur as my wife came home from the hospital and my dog started barking. So I can relate to having the dog crew. So a couple other things. One, we know you talked to Sean. Sean's a partner of ours. I'm working on 3 different projects with Sean right now. You know, when we talk about setting the stage for zoning, OHM, we also write a number of zoning codes. We didn't really see the need to partner up with a zoning consultant because we write zoning codes ourselves. And because we're not doing a full code rewrite, but actually setting the table for you, feel very confident that we can achieve that piece. We also know that you have a number of economic development tools in the bag. Again, kind of listening through the journey that you guys have been on. I know the last Zoom you had, you talked a lot about that, the tools that you have. So we'll work with Chris to add to that. But we definitely don't want to replace anything you've already done, like the CRA that you already have in place, things like that. We want to move you forward. And so we'll work with Chris on making sure that's done well. The other thing is capital improvement projects. When we look at a corridor, you know, we really need to be in sync with the rest of the city and the departments as it relates to engineering projects, capital improvement projects that actually can be a seed for a lot of this change. And kind of set the tone for how the private sector can engage here by putting in new infrastructure and facilitating that development. And the last piece is the character, set the table for the character. I'll show you some examples of that in a minute. But you talked a lot about in the RFP, your character, your brand, your gateways, all of that has to come together to create this sense of place. Because ultimately that's what's going to attract the investment. When we looked at our scope, it's probably not unlike the other team as we approach this. I've worked with all those team members in the past, and so you know we approach things somewhat similarly. And so you know our phase is going to look through phase five phases. Excuse me. We'll have a project kickoff. We'll get oriented. We'll review the existing data. We'll have a kickoff meeting with the client team. Then we'll look at the market conditions and what I'll call the contextual analysis, which is really the existing conditions. Of the corridor, of our target development sites with you, and kind of really understand not only the technical piece that of the existing space, but also that market piece as well. At the same time, we'll be doing outreach and engagement. You know, I just caught the tail end of the last presentation. I think our approach is a little bit different, being much more focused. You know, when we're looking at this corridor and we're looking at development sites, we want to spend a lot of our time talking to the property owners, the folks around those properties, also developers, investors within the area, and key staff members to really understand what's possible. Because when we get down to the kind of that fine grain of how do we actually reposition these sites in the market, it's important to understand what the community wants in the community, but we also have to be realistic with what we can get done, what's planned within Wickliffe in terms of capital projects, and how we think we can attract private investment to those areas. We spend a lot of time with those higher level stakeholders. Phase 4 is defining the strategy. We'll start rendering up the sites, coming up with principles for how we want the corridor redeveloped, and really starting to put the framework together, the land use, the zoning, the economic development piece all together. And then phase 5 is drafting the overall strategy, where we put the plan together and deliver it to you guys. You know, our goal here is not to deliver a 50-page document. It's probably to deliver something less than 20 with a lot of supporting text. We want to deliver to you a communication tool. You know, I've done this long enough. I worked with a lot of private sector investors to know what you want to come out of this is not only a direction for the city, but it's something that's going to attract that investment in quickly. And that's got to be something that they can look at. It's got to be very nimble. Here's our schedule. It's pretty short and condensed, and that's intentional because I think we want to get on to doing the good work, which is marketing the sites, marketing the corridor, and getting into doing the work to reposition it. So a real quick look at kind of where we've been. I think this is the one piece I wanted to spend a little bit more time in talking about. You know, we've done a lot of these strategic redevelopment projects around the Midwest. I think I counted more than 50 as I was going through the project sheets here to talk to you about how many we've done. This is what we do. What we do is we bring the public sector experience, the private sector perspective together to create great plans for corridors like this to facilitate reinvestment. Kind of one of our flagship projects we started a while ago is actually in Medina. So we're picking some just kind of up the road from you. This is in the downtown. We did a downtown plan for them. Unlike a corridor, it was just a little bit more condensed, but it was all about looking at target redevelopment sites. How do we position them in the market? So that included a market study like this, as well as concept plans, and then helping them facilitate that development, marketing it. And so this is something that came out in 2009, just showing how one of these sites is taking shape. This is the Raymond Building at the corner of North Court and West Friendship Streets. It's just an example. I really wanted to showcase things where we went from plan to construction and helped our clients get there. One of my other clients I work a lot with is in Reynoldsburg, Ohio. This is down in Central Ohio, where we did their comprehensive plan, their zoning code update. We did some landscape code updates. And then we went to comp plan to zoning code. And that was actually with Sean Suter, where we partnered with them. This is kind of fun. I wanted to showcase some of our graphics. So if you have your smartphone handy, you can actually open up your camera. And you can point it at that QR code. I wanted to give you a shot of kind of what we would be rendering for you to help facilitate the kind of the marketing of these sites. This will take you right into this rendering that we did for this site. This was a Kmart site right on the main street. This is the National Road, the National Road that goes right through Reynoldsburg. And so we actually rendered this up and helped them go from comp plan to code to attract investment. So if you're able to point your camera at that, you should be able to kind of bring that look up to 3D view. This is the type of graphics we can do for you guys as part of this project, not only to attract the private investment, but also communicate to the public sector what it is you're trying to achieve. Again, another area not too far from you is Worcester. This is kind of the East Liberty area plan, where again, for that with Worcester, we went from comp plan to downtown plan to working on gateways and branding, streetscape, public spaces, to create something that looked like this in the heart of the downtown, which was a great success, right? All the way from vision, all the way to construction. The Hamilton Road corridor plan, this is in Gahanna, Ohio. We did the corridor plan. We followed that up with the zoning work, gateway design. I won't show you the gateway design, but also then continue on with development support. How do you get from here to there? Working with the city to translate the vision and the plan actually into reality. So a little idea of kind of what the concept started to look like in there. This was a pretty traditional kind of, stripped out retail corridor. We worked to translate that into something a little bit different. So we then took those development areas and rendered them up, looking at something here like medical office with structured parking, which we were able to achieve in some of these areas. And then actually all the way to construction. So this actually had a new school that was built on it. This is on your left. This is called Clark Hall. We actually did the planning, the architecture, and design. This won an Ohio School Facilities Commission Award because not only was it a school, but we actually integrated into it the Ohio Technical College, YMCA, a credit union, made a mixed-use building out of it, and positioned it in the corridor, which was something really great that the school needed us to think about, as well as the city, right? So how do we help continue education within the community, but takes tax revenue, generate that as well. And at the end of the day, that's more than a school. It's actually designed as an office building. So when the schools are done facilitating peak demand, it converts back. And what you see on the right is actually a little mixed use development that's right next to the school. The joke I always make is I wish I would have opened up that Chipotle next to that high school, because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. Another look at East Liberty. This continued on our work in Worcester. This was on the east side of downtown. This is the East Liberty area plan that we developed for them. This is kind of hot off the presses at the end of Bell Avenue, just down the street from Worcester. So just another idea of kind of the graphic representation, how this all comes together, where it's not just about the area plan, but it's about the vision and the development that comes with that. So I wanted to give you a look at all of that work and kind of pause here for questions and have that dialogue with you guys.
Does anybody have any questions for these gentlemen?
Sure, Ed, I have one.
Go ahead, Matt.
What do you guys think is the biggest challenge for the city of Wycliffe along Euclid Avenue?
That's a good question. I think it's really about the pulling together of the key stakeholders, right? It's all about creating alignment, not only from the elected and appointed officials, but the property owners, those right around those target development sites that you're looking at repositioning. The magic's really going to happen when we're able to have those conversations, bring those small focus groups together and create that alignment. Because we need everybody kind of working towards that common vision and strategy. If we don't have that, the work on the back end is much harder. And so right now, that's what I would say is probably the biggest challenge. I think we can quickly get down to that level of detail and spend most of our time there. Less on the big vision, more on focusing on the implementation and the redevelopment strategies.
To take that a step further, what do you do when you have stakeholders, for instance, property owners that just don't care?
Yeah, well, that wouldn't be the first time we had that question or have seen that response. So, when we get into this, right, we know one of the sites is the school sites, but we're going to look at some other sites as well. And so we have to make sure that the redevelopment areas we pick with you have support of the property owners. But in some cases, if you don't, it's about just working the opportunity around them. I've been involved. I know you guys are probably familiar with Ohio State, South Campus, and what's happened there. There are instances where that development happened without key stakeholders. Through that process, it was creating the market and ultimately bringing them to the table to say, hey, could be good for you. It's good for the local community, and kind of get them kind of folded into that. If we can't have that, then it's all about working on the zoning code and the guidelines and making sure that we kind of protect the integrity of those parcels through the right setbacks, the right scale and massing of the structures around them. But I honestly have only encountered that a few times where we've looked at redevelopment sites and weren't able to get everybody at the table.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Joe.
Yeah, so the renderings you were discussing, are those included in the proposal or is that an extra cost? Like you put the plans for the buildings and site plans, things like that.
That's all part of what we do, Joe. And honestly, I think that's a little bit of our differentiator. Our planning and urban design studio, we're about 40 deep. And we work not only for the public sector, but the private sector. So on a daily basis, I'm actually have 3 projects going now with private developers. And so that's just part of what we do. And when we do approach the focus areas, the redevelopment sites, we do it in a way where we actually know what those guys and gals are doing in the private sector. So we're not going to integrate something that's the wrong type of mixed use building, the wrong type of medical office. Retail is pretty much on the shelf right now. And so we know what they are doing. And when we approach the redevelopment sites, we're doing it in a way that's responsive to kind of where they're at in the market. And I can tell you, it is a wild ride out there right now in terms of what's happening. I'm working on projects that are large medical office projects. I'm working on town center projects, some mixed use. And they're also, what is very true is that the private sector is not on pause right now. They are not on pause. In fact, they're actually more on fire right now than they have been in the past, positioning properties, assembling property, and getting ready for when the market really snaps back. And I can say that because our private development side is actually busier than it's ever been.
Okay, good. That's very helpful that you answered that. It's that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. So, those who aren't actively working to position themselves right now, like we're talking about with you, are they going to be the ones that are farther behind when we, probably 12 to 24 months from now?
Right.
I would like a chance to respond to one of the questions that came up earlier, and I'll kind of throw my friend Chris under the bus. I think the referendum zoning is a challenge. I mean, I'd be lying if I sat here and told you it wasn't. I think you guys know that. I mean, I watched all the other Zooms as you worked up to this meeting with us. It's a challenge. Chris did say something that I thought was very appropriate, which is it's all about expectation. So to be development ready, you have to have the expectation. So if we don't have the right zoning in place, that's going to line up with where we want to go from the redevelopment of our target areas. That's a problem. That's a big problem. I mean, the one thing I hope I could offer you up from our team is just a sense of honesty. Now that can't be overcome, right? So part of what you're asking us to do is look at zoning and make recommendations. It might mean that you got to take that back out because some of these properties just aren't zoned right. And that's just something I think we have to be ready for. Because at the end of the day, they need to be zoned and they need to be basically shovel ready, or I don't think you're going to get the traction that you want to have on them. And that's just the reality. And so, you know, I love Chris. He's a friend of mine. We hang out inside and outside of work. So I think I just wanted to clarify his answer because he's also on my team to make sure I had some airtime to say that.
I think he was just going with a politically correct answer and you gave a different answer.
I'm just giving you the honest answer. Yeah.
Any other questions for these? Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, just one last one. How do you help, I guess, build support in the community and the residents if your focus is on the stakeholders?
Good question. And I'm going to go out on a limb here again, right? So I gave you the honest answer about the zoning. I'm going to give you an honest answer about this one. At the end of the day, when you get into some of these target sites, it doesn't need to be a community consensus of what you need to happen. That community consensus oftentimes does not align with market realities or conditions. I think we need to listen of what you want that corridor to be. And I can tell you probably within reason, what everybody wants it to be, right? Walkable, livable, mix of uses, generating revenue for your city, and you know, having opportunities for entertainment and things like that. But when we get down to actually how do we position the properties, that's where we really have to focus in on getting it done. And we can't let the community necessarily drive every decision there. That's not going to result in what we want to see happen. That's where we step it up when we take it to the property owner, the neighborhoods around the property, elected and appointed officials, and have smaller discussions on how we get that done.
Right, but it does with the referendum zoning in play, you know, where we need.
Well, I would be afraid to start there, Joe. I would just be
right.
afraid to start there with like everybody knows what's best for the corridor, right?
Right. Agreed.
What values are and what aspirations you have. But when we get down to actually the kind of getting into the redevelopment and repositioning of target areas, that's where we get a little bit tighter. Because honestly, too, when you know, if we let all that out, that starts to change the market pretty quickly. And so we have to be careful with how that happens.
Okay, thank you.
Maria?
I just said one last thing. I know we're running low on time too, but so I understand what you're saying about, you know, we reach out to the stakeholders that are in place right now and, you know, try to do what needs to be done. The problem is that, you know, the stakeholders in place right now, not necessarily, as, you know, several of us have stated, terribly on board with development because, you know, they're just happy to just sit back and just let it be. So I guess I'm just saying, I understand the stakeholders are important. The elected officials are important. You guys are going to look at the market dynamics and you're going to look at, you know, what would be the best plan moving forward. But then, you know, how are you going to help us get there? Like, will you help us attract the development we need? Will you help us, you know, put forth that plan, whether or not we have buy-in of the stakeholders that are sitting there? Because for the most part, we're not going to have buy-in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What we need is some direction and we need some help in implementing. You know, we need to put down some direction that makes sense for our city. And then we need help moving that forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple of things on that, Maria, as it relates to implementation, right? So one is we have to have the right strategy. It has to be right market based, has to be the right concept for that site that makes sense within the market. We have to line up the right incentives. Right. So that's something we excel at as a team. You know, the second piece is how do you market it? So how we package this all up so that you can communicate it clearly, whether that's you or your development consultant, mayor or others. And then the third piece is what we can bring, which on almost every example I showed you, we were able to do, which is start to marry up people within the private sector that we know are doing these types of projects, right? So we do work for major medical providers. We do work for people who do mixed use development. We do work for the housing developers as well. And so once we understand the vision and kind of where those focus areas are going, we can try to facilitate that for you. We can kind of almost be that broker, say, hey, look, there's something's going on in Wycliffe. This might be something you're interested in. Some people frown on that, but because they think they should just work for the public sector. And again, my third risk with you is it makes us stronger, right? Because not only are our development strategies more focused and realistic within the market, but we can actually start to bridge some of those gaps for you if the opportunity is right. And so that's the three ways I would respond to that question.
Okay, thank you. I think that's important. Okay. Thanks.
Any further questions? All right, well, thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate your time. Great presentation.
Well, we appreciate the time too, and best of luck as you move forward in the selection process. And hopefully we were able to kind of offer up some perspectives as it relates to who we are, what we've done, how we translated that into development. And we'll be there for you. I mean, this isn't, I know the last group said they're not about shelf plans. We're definitely not about shelf plans. And these are the types of plans we like to do. We don't like to do the big visions that, say a lot of things, but actually don't get into how you get it done. So we think we're a great alignment for the project. So thanks again.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, well, I think we need to make a decision. I think however the majority decides, we need to make a decision whether we want to recommend one or the other, or recommend not doing it at all. So we need to figure out as a committee what we're going to recommend to council, whether we want to go with OHM, whether we want to go with MS Consultants, or we just choose not to reward the RFP to anybody. Anybody want to start?
Oh, I'll start.
Go ahead, Maria.
Thanks. So I thought both of the presentations were good. What I really wanted, the whole purpose of this, I wanted us to see, what kind of bringing it all together as a project with a working group that is used to doing this and is used to having success and development of projects. I think we need that little bit of help. I really do. We've got a great economic development, coordinator. Monica does a great job. And I think, John, you've done a great job trying to attract as much as you can. And you've pounded the pavements talking to these business owners, and you're constantly looking at, what we can do to kind of, further development. Both of you are. And I think that's so admirable. I think it's great. But I really think it would be helpful to us as a city at this point to have somebody who is, to hire a firm, not at a huge cost, just the Euclid Avenue, if we don't want to spend further than that, but like truly have someone to just sit down with us and do the whole market dynamic picture, help us with the zoning, help us connect us to developers that they may know in the area. I mean, they do it a lot more than we do, and they know a lot more people than we do. And it is incumbent upon them. I mean, it's really incumbent upon them to have success. If they don't have success, they don't have a company. So they obviously have relationships, and they obviously have ways to connect us to the people that will help us develop the city, and quickly. I really think this is something we need at this juncture. And I've said this 4 years ago, and I've been saying it every day since then. I think we're being foolish not to hire somebody to help us and to sit aside Monica and John and the council and the planning commission and whoever is going to be involved in this. I think we need somebody to kind of be the quarterback for us right now. That's just my, and I think both of them did a good job, and you guys can talk about either one of them. But I mean, in my personal opinion, I think we really need this.
Joe?
All right, this is a two-parter, so hold on. Me personally, I feel, again, we should wait for this referendum zoning to be voted on, then go. But with that said, Maria, I do want to support you, and I do agree with you. So if I had to choose one of the two, I would, me personally, again, there's many of us, would say MS.
Sherry?
Maria, thank you for bringing these people for us to listen to. I still, however, am reluctant to go with anyone at this point. I just feel like Monica and John are doing a good job bringing in companies that we haven't, had a lot of new businesses coming in many years, and they seem to be doing a good job. I know Euclid Avenue needs a lot of help, but it's unfortunate that, the biggest eyesore we don't have any control over. And I don't know, I agree with waiting about the referendum zoning to see what happens with that. Because, we know a lot of things we would like to see on Euclid Avenue, but it's like when we had that other study done that Pete provided us. You get the study, you look at the study, you go, wow, that's exciting. And then what happens if you don't have the property owners willing to, jump on the bandwagon? You just have a plan and that's it. So.
Joe?
Sherry, 100% agree. That's our biggest hurdle is all the privately owned businesses. That's what holds us. And one good thing with like True Line and that area over by 290th with the Yanish selling and that new business owner next to the Provo house, things like that coming into effect, that's what helps us change demographics if the right things go. So I don't know if that with MS would help, but that's what fears about hiring a company with all the privately owned businesses. That's what worries me the most. But thank you for
guys. With that, if I can jump in on that point, I mean, that's why we should do this, because those properties are changing hands. We can't say we've got difficult property owners for the rest of our lives. We still have one or two, but they're changing hands. And even the Key Bank building's under contract with the new owner. And this is going to take, 6 months? I don't know, the one company said 6 months to complete. The referendum zoning is not going to be on until November. Right?
Okay.
We all
right,
we all
good
get
point.
behind it. We know it's going to pass. I mean, again, I know we've had that problem in the past, but properties are changing hands. And if we support those people right now, the people that are making the difficult decisions to invest in Wickliffe, it's going to pay dividends.
Right.
Those people are going to come to the table. I've sat down with a lot of them already. I reach out to them. They go, yes, the guy that bought the Key Bank building and next to Provo House, Monica and I had coffee with him 2 weeks ago. They're eager. They're ready to invest more.
Right. But it's important that we have a plan to show prospective purchasers or
Premier Development. I mean, they got,
hey,
there's
about this.
the school property. We got a lot we can work with, a lot more than we could have 3 years ago.
And even when we want to go get grants or we want to go get look into other areas to bring in cash, I mean, we'd have a plan to show them, hey, we're really dedicated to this redevelopment concept. Here's the plan. So I think it's even more important for newer people that want to reach out. I mean, you don't have a plan. What's the incentive for them to spend more money here? I think it would be foolish to just think we're just going to onesie twosie things at this point when we really have the opportunity to put together, an overall guide to what we're trying to accomplish as a city.
I like
to
go
add
big.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I've been listening to everything, and this is just my perspective. We kicked this can for many, many years. I like the OHF plan. If I was to pick, I feel they bring a lot more experience to the plate, and that's definitely what we need. Yeah, we are going to change. We are going to put this to the voters to change, the zoning laws, and that's important too. But I think us as city council members, and I see it in Maria's voice that we need to move forward. We got to come up with something. We got to be a little more aggressive than what we've been. And irregardless if the vote is changed or not, at least we're showing something that we're trying to develop somewhere. And John made mention new people have bought property. So I'm all for it. Okay. I want everybody to think this through, but I definitely would go with the OHF. You just hear it in their voices, mentioning of the other cities, other developers that I know personally involved in other cities. I think we're putting our best foot forward. You know, it's nice to be Wycliffe of old, but we have to be Wycliffe of new. We have to be ready to change. And that's just my personal feeling. I rest what I have to say.
Can I just tag on to what Tom said too?
Sure, Maria.
Back to the respective with the referendum vote that's coming up. I mean, how much stronger is our case if we've got, you know, a plan saying, look, we've got this plan. We need more flexibility. We need to, you know, move the city forward. So we need referendum, you know, voting to kind of, I mean, we need to take care of that situation. I think the voters, I mean, if we have that plan to share with the voters, or we have have something to share with the voters as to why we want to change it.
Oh, can I add one more thing?
Sure, Tom.
Yeah, I did talk with Pat McGraw at length, and we talked about why that law was put into play back in 77, 78. And I had forgotten where was the reason to do that. But talking with Pat and their knowledge and being around, yeah, we need to do something different in our city. Pat and I are pretty much the same. Well, he's a year older than me. We went to grade school and high school together. So I just think with him and met with the people on that committee, I just think it's a win-win for our city. This is another thing. I'm done. That's it.
Okay, I have one more.
Sure, Maria.
So I also agree with Tom. I mean, I liked both of the presentations. I liked the community engagement with the first presentation, but again, another important point is community engagement is great. I think we should have some, but you know, the reality is when it comes to Euclid Avenue, I mean, we need to make some decisions that just are going to make logical sense, that are like within reach. I mean, I think community engagement is great. Yes, everybody wants a bike path and everybody wants, you know, to like drink certain kind of Kool-Aid on summer days. But the bottom line is, you know, what do we need to do for the city and how can we execute it once we decide this is what we need to do? I feel like OHM can do that maybe a little more quickly, but again, that's just my vote. I know that some people have some issues with OHM and I had really hoped that they'd address those issues, but I think they just decided to just talk about what they were good at and bypass all of the scuttlebutt stuff that we have been talking about. But again, you know, I liked the fact that they had actual examples of successful projects in cities. And that's what attracted me to them to begin with.
Randy?
Well, since Monica Drake handles our city development, does Monica Drake have I mean, if we're going to move forward, does she have a preference on or a feeling on what company would be the best for us to move forward with, since that's what she does here?
I support what council feels would be best for the city. My only concern has been voice, and that's my only concern. And you guys are well aware of it, so I'm not going to discuss it again. I think you can approach it various ways. I think you can choose one. I think you could focus on the zoning. You guys are the decision makers. I'm excited about the movement we're seeing. I do have a little bit of angst about how some of the stuff's zoned that doesn't support development. I think that's been a challenge, and I think both teams could do something, or independently, something's focused on zoning, and then coming back once you identify issues with zoning, coming back and doing a plan. So it's up to you guys on your approach. I just support what you guys want, because like I said, you guys are the decision makers. I only shared what I saw. I think we are having nice movement. Anybody, any team can do, provide you grant recommendations. Anybody can do that. It's just a matter of how much money. So that being said, they all do it. You just have to go with what you feel the city needs at this time. One of the things I think the city needs at this time is attention to the zoning. And whether it's in the full RFP or specialized, either way, I think that that's something that needs focus. I think you could get a little bit more latitude in other areas if you did a more specialized one. But that being said, this is up to you guys, because, either way, either approach, it'll be fine.
Monica, what was our vote count when you did that last?
I think OHM was a little higher, and then there were concerns raised that might have changed the score had it been brought about earlier, but some of them, they were very neck and neck, and they were 1-2. So I think you're going to get good quality out of whatever route you guys go.
Sure.
Yeah, my only concern is if, knowing about what happened with OHM, if we were to go with them, knowing that, and something, God forbid, were to happen, then, it's almost like, I don't know. So that's, maybe it's moving scare, I guess, but I would just go, a little bit why I lean more towards MS.
Well, Joy, I understand your hesitation, and I agree with you. I think that the economic development manager has made it clear that she's hesitant about them because she wouldn't work with a company that had that kind of history. And I don't want anything like that to happen, and then our residents to find out that we knew that this happened in the past and we allowed it to potentially happen again. So that's, if they were really neck and neck and it was close, I'm almost, and both made great presentations. I would just lean toward more for MS Consulting than I would OHM based on all that.
So we're at 2-2, right? Anybody? Don't we need Matt, Randy, or whoever's on? That's all of us, right? That are on this committee.
Yeah, and there's all 7 of us are on it.
I just want to throw one other
It's all good.
Yes, there was an issue with OHM that just happened recently. But if we were to look at any firm in the history of anybody doing any kind of development or, even architecture, design, building, there is not a firm that I could name that you guys could probably find that has never had a lawsuit. That's really, I just want to point that out.
Amen.
Pete, is that true? There you go.
Yeah, there's 50 lawyers to every law.
Yeah, that's very true.
Randall?
Only thing I can add, being a businessman, is you're going to come to a rise in situations. People are going to find some fault and wrong. Did anybody get hurt? That's what you have to weigh. What was the outcome of it? Okay. Sometimes you don't cross your T and dot your I's. You learn from it. Sometimes when you do deal with somebody that had made past mistakes, they'll never go there again. So that's another thing.
Correct, but we pay an economic developer, so at some point we should trust her opinion. At some point.
Randy, go ahead.
And on that point, she's almost talking that if we don't, work on the zoning first, like Matt said earlier, that you get some of the owners that are on the avenue, there's a couple of pieces of ground there that are, you don't get some support of the owners on that ground, like the Ponderosa or the 290th corner now, that we could be spending a lot of money if we don't fix that zoning first. So
maybe Scott, did you have something to say?
Sorry, as I'm mute there. No, I was just, yes, every company has problems, but as people tell you, once again, we wouldn't be able to contract any work out in this city, especially in the construction industry. If that was a requirement that they never had a lawsuit filed against them, we would have zero options on people performing work. It does sound like council's a little bit all over the place here on whether to go. I think maybe I'm still getting a mixed sense from people here on whether they want to proceed with a company or not. I know given kind of votes, maybe you should narrow this down to, do you want to proceed with anyone at this time, and then take the vote on that. See, it seems like there's a lot of caution on whether you still want to go forward with this or not at this point.
There could be, but we need to finalize this. This has been going on for 6 to 8 weeks.
Sure, and I do understand that. A lot of people haven't given their sense of whether they want to proceed with the company, and that could all be done right now. But do people want to proceed with picking a company? Because if the vote's going to be no on that, the other one becomes not so relevant.
And I agree. I agree. I think it would need a majority. It has to make a decision. I need 4 people to decide on one or the other, or nothing. If it's a split of 3-2-2 or something like that, then we move on. We just RFPs.
Yeah, I'm just a little confused on the sense of where council or where this committee feels if they want to go forward with this at this point.
There's definitely hesitation for sure. Maria.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that everyone is either seeing the benefit of going with a company, or we're still hanging on to that, hey, maybe we should like do a zoning study, or we should wait to see what the vote is, or all that stuff. Okay, number one, both of these companies will help us with the zoning, okay? But the point is that we have to wait for the election to do anything with the zoning anyway, okay? So why not, let somebody get that all together and actually have a plan to share with the public, so that when they go to vote, whether yes or no, we're going to change the zoning, there's something substantial for them to look at. Plus, I don't see the benefit of doing a separate zoning study right now, when the zoning study will be included in both of these, but with the addition of all kinds of other direction and help. And I don't understand like why we would be hesitating. If we're going to do something, I think we should do this that includes the zoning. Why would we want to just do zoning? Because we don't even know what we're trying to accomplish. You've got a plan, and then you've got the zoning changes, then you're getting somewhere and quicker.
Randy.
Well,
So
if we're going to go with one, then I'm going to go with MS.
Okay. I was gonna say I'd go around the room and just see what they say, and I'm MS, so there we go.
Well, Matt, you're the only one that hasn't spoken yet, brother. No pressure.
And it was my understanding the last time that I heard from the administration that they said they didn't want to do this at all. So if that's the case, I'll go with the administration and say no.
Well, I don't know if that's the actual truth or not. I think that John would want to do something.
At this point, yes, and I've made that pretty clear. Whichever direction council takes with whichever one of these companies, we need to do something here.
So if we pick the company,
Yes, and also,
pick the
Ed,
one. I want you guys to make a decision so we can just get on with it. I mean, Monica and I are going to produce results with whatever firm we choose. We're going to bring the people together. We're going to get the zoning changes. We're going to sell it at the ballot, et cetera, et cetera. Let's just make a decision and let's get on with it. I mean, Maria and I agree. How often does that happen, right? Let's.
True.
It's beautiful.
Armageddon.
Sign from the gods. Let's move
Right.
forward.
Monday. It's a magic Monday.
Tell everybody you love them tonight.
Yeah.
Ain't gonna happen.
Play.
But
And
I agree.
also, I do want
We
to
need
point
the
out,
guidance. This is good. We need to do this.
also, I want to point out what I had said was misunderstood. And so
Right.
that wasn't actually what was said. And it was just a misunderstanding of what I had said, is all.
Good.
I'm just gonna let that go. Anyway, I think we need to move forward, guys.
Okay, so that's 3MS, 2 OHM, where we at, Sherry?
I think if Sherry, Matt decided they're not comfortable yet, then I guess there's no true majority. But if they're comfortable with one or the other, then they should let us know. If they're not, then there's no true majority and we just deny them both.
Matt just said he would listen to us, and we said, and I just said I'd like to do this. I head up the administration.
Correct.
Matt, can you clarify your comments?
Well, if I can get a word in edgewise in this meeting. Mr. Mayor, Monica, again, the last thing that I heard from you guys apparently wasn't right. So if that's the case and we're actually looking at this and saying it's between one or the other, I would probably go with MS.
Okay. So that is 4, and that's the majority. So obviously I'll recommend that what Sherry said, that she's still not 100% comfortable yet. And I'll recommend that Marie, or state that Marie and Tom had chosen OHM, but the other 4 had recommended MS Consultants, and we'll recommend that to the council going forward at the next meeting, and mark this item out of committee. This meeting adjourned at 8:18. Okay, I'll call at 8:19. I'll call to order the committee to hold, discuss referendum zoning. Last meeting, or 2 weeks ago, we talked about the ordinance that was in place in 2019, ordinance 2019-24, that was read 3 times and voted down, of resubmitting that exact same ordinance again in 2021 to be voted on, to put to an end to referendum zoning. And from there, the zoning changes would be reverted to the charter sector, sorry, the chapter 1341, where it talks about the initiation of zoning changes and how it goes through the planning commission. So I asked anybody if they wanted to make any changes. I think the law director sent out an email and said there really shouldn't be any changes. It's just the removal of that piece of the charter. Councilman Randy.
Well, that falls back to the ordinance. I think that's why it gets voted down, is the fact that you remove the whole thing from the charter. If we're going to get rid of the referendum zoning in the charter, then we need to put the new procedure in the charter and not just leave it in an ordinance where it could be changed easily the next time. I mean, I want to do this where it's right. I want to get rid of referendum zoning, but I don't want it left in an ordinance. I want the chart, if we could amend the charter the way it reads to make it just, I mean, we're trying to make it fair, but we're trying to speed up the process. But if you leave it in an ordinance, any council years down the road could just change that ordinance without the voters knowing about it.
I understand. So to the law director, Scott, could we take certain sections, say 134120, 134130, and 134140, and insert them into the charter instead?
Yes, anything's possible. Put it in the charter. I probably would not recommend that you put the actual process, like a whole entire ordinance or structure of that, into a charter, because then even one word of the slightest detail to change that, as we know, these ordinances, sometimes by reason of law, we have to change, often make amendments to ordinances or repeal certain provisions. Once we put it in the charter, it would require an entire vote of the city if we had to, change a small provision. It's typical for cities that do not have referendum zoning that the process is controlled through ordinance, not through, the entire process controlled through a charter. And there's a reason why it's not done that way. So I would not recommend doing it that way. If there's certain things that council would absolutely want to safeguard, that could be put in the charter. One of the provisions that we talked about, and it was the way it was written last time, was it was very important that anything had to be done, could never be done by an emergency measure. So the last time we made the charter change, we adapted a little bit, so it kept that provision in the charter, that nothing could ever be done by emergency basis by council. So after that long-winded response, it comes down to, yes, it could be done by the charter, but that's not typically recommended to do that entire process that way. Since I am speaking to that, and as Councilman Gerhardstein did note, we already have ordinances in place. And I would recommend that if council does decide to go forward and the committee decides to put this before council to vote on having this charter change done, and council does vote on that, approves that, at that point, maybe in legislation and welfare, or if the whole council wants to be in committee of the whole, I do think at a minimum, there should be, I've reviewed our current ordinances very carefully, and I've found some loose ends in there that I think at a minimum, some things need to be tied up a little tighter in there. And I would talk about those recommendations in the appropriate committee. But I would strongly urge that as well, too, that if council does eventually pass this, then it's time to start planning on what if the voters decide to go with it. We should be prepared with our ordinances or any other changes that we're comfortable with.
Joe?
Seeing as if Mr. Bittens is on planning commission, he is a big, there are changes that he has been very vocal on what should be made. Can we let him speak at this time?
Does anybody have any objections to let Mr. Bittens speak during this meeting? If not, Steve, do you want to speak?
Sorry, I had to push the wrong button first, then I unmute myself. I'd be happy to, and I first off, I'm glad to hear that hopefully the plan is moving forward, because I would like to see a change to the referendum zoning, but I want to make sure that we have in place something that you and everyone else can turn to the voters and say, rest assured, your zoning isn't going to get changed quickly or easily or on a whim. And so having a plan in place, right? And that your commitment is to changing zoning only so it's consistent with that plan. And having an established procedure that can't easily get changed or taken away would be important. And so while I see Scott's concern about having, too much detail in the charter that makes it difficult to amend or change as needed, I think it would be very reassuring to voters to be able to say to them, yes, we're taking away your vote. We're asking you to give up your right to vote on every zoning change, but we're putting in the charter some guidelines, some guidepost, a guardrail, whatever phrase you want to use, that make sure you understand in the charter that some future council can't turn and quickly change the zoning on you, right? Because sometimes when I hear folks talk about zoning in our city, right, they say, hey, a property owner came along and they wanted to change this property, or someone wanted to buy this property and they wanted to quickly change the zoning to this new business idea they had, right? That's not what zoning should be, right? Zoning isn't supposed to be changed at the whim of a property owner who shows up because today they want to show up in our city and do business, right? Zoning should reflect what the community as a whole wants our city to be, right? And so it's get this and develop this master plan with input of the community and with the input of the stakeholders, right? And then rezone it, whether or not the property owner approves of the rezoning, right? You don't need the property owner's consent to rezone city. You can rezone the property based on a plan. And then it's in place, right? It is not that we're going to get a master plan, do no rezoning, and whether or not we have referendum zoning, sit on our hands and wait till somebody comes along and says, I want to use the property, rezone it for me, right? Then our plan is garbage. There's no point of a plan if that's what we want to do for rezoning. So my 2 cents, but I think getting rid of the referendum zoning, but putting in place all the tools to make it very saleable to the voters will be important. And having something in the charter that puts guideposts around how the zoning can be changed, I think will be helpful.
And Ed, if I can make a quick comment.
Go ahead, John.
On that, Steve, I agree. And Scott, to your point, I definitely understand and appreciate that. But I look at it, it's difficult to change now and it's hindering us. And if it's difficult to change later, but it's helping us, I think we'll be in a better position.
Monica?
I'd like to piggyback also on what Steve said, and John said, the current zoning is, even though the council or if planning would like to change make a zoning change to the map, actually a private property owner does not have to go through the planning and the council. The way their charter is set up, and please, if I'm inaccurate, correct me if I'm wrong, but based on what I read in the charter, is that the property owner can actually go get the signatures and take it to ballot, and the process never goes through our planning and never is reviewed by council. And because of that, actually by removing the referendum zoning out of the charter and rewriting it to a more, to have everything go through planning, have them make a recommendation, having that public hearing at a planning level, moving it into council, having the 3 readings at regular meetings, and having a public hearing at council actually brings it more control to the city and to the planning and city, and keeping in alignment with the overall plan of the city. So I just wanted to point that piece out as well. Thank you.
Scott, even if we reference the chapter that it has to adhere to, like chapter 1341, would that be sufficient enough? Like, I don't know how we want to put
Right. If I'm hearing you, you're saying that like we reference specifically in there what would be controlling.
Maybe not all the.
But once again, that maybe that doesn't protect it because it just references the section, says we have to go by that, but it's ordinance, so it can always be changed by council. And it would just change, under the chart. It just says you have to follow that ordinance, whatever it currently is at that time.
You're right.
So once again, and as I said before, we can put protections in the charter, but we would need to decide what protections we want in there. What are the rules?
I would think as simple as must see planning commission, must see council, 3 readings. I don't know if we said board of zoning appeals as well, but I mean, 3 bullet points, must go through these 3 channels.
Yeah, I mean, those sections, those chapters are pretty much that Scott sent to us. I don't know if you were copied on it, John, but they're pretty self-explanatory. I mean, they're pretty explanatory, and I don't know how much gray area there is, but I'd almost like to put those in there. It talks about, how, if it's proposed by council, it's got to go to planning commission. If it's proposed by the planning commission, it still has to go there. There's multiple meetings. There's 60-day time. Has to be done by 3 readings. I'd almost put all that in there as much as you can. That makes sense. I don't know if we want to have the planning commission review it, and if they want to make any edits on this before we put it on that or not, if they want to put any input in it, because they're going to be the main contributor. Matt, do you guys have a meeting in April or March that you know of yet? Ray, you don't know of anything yet?
Nothing yet.
I'm wondering if they can at least call a meeting. When do you meet on a first Thursday?
That's correct.
I'm wondering if they can call a meeting in the first Thursday of April, and at least discuss this and give their recommendations of what they think should be on the charter. And then we can also use that at one more meeting on this and approve it out to the council, and then have our 3 readings of the ordinance as it's rewritten. But at least have their input of what they think should be on the charter, as they are going to be the backbone of this whole zoning changes, if there are any.
And maybe that'd be my opportunity. As I spoke, I have some concerns.
Correct. Correct. And then you can,
I can discuss that with the planning commission, go into more detail with it.
Correct.
And keeping, as you mentioned, the important thing here is really it's a July cutoff timeline we're dealing with here, because this is something that will have to be done by 3 readings for our charter. It can't be done by emergency. But it's also something, I think, something so important that some time is going to be needed with it. If we had to have special meetings after our second one or whatever, but I agree, maybe this should be run through planning commission first, through committee again, because it's altering something very, very important in our city. So I think you want to be careful how you put it to the voters.
Correct. And I think the timeline would be if they meet in the first week of April, the first Thursday of April, and then we meet the third Monday with a committee meeting with the recommendations. We pass it on to the committee. And then you can have the first reading at the last week of April and then 2 in May, or the first 2 in May and the first week of June, or the first meeting in June. Therefore, we get it out by July. So unless anybody has any objections, I think that's probably the best way to go is to have get their input. And then I'm sure the voters, if this is what we're going to pass this, I think the voters would appreciate the fact that we sent the planning commission to decide, let residents give their input. Okay.
I agree.
I agree.
Any objections to that?
None.
Ed, I'm happy to take it to planning commission, but I stand behind what I said all along. I will not support referendum zoning.
All right, well, I appreciate you taking it to them. Ray, can you initiate that with Pat to let him know that we're gonna have a meeting at least on this topic?
Yes, Mr. Council President, I will call an information and guidance meeting for council, for the referendum zoning. And I'd recommend all council people to please
attend.
Get the meeting.
Yes. So when we who's just Sandy, if Sandy sets up those meetings, just have her include us all on that.
Yes. Yes.
On the invite.
Thank you. Okay. I'll get with Scott on the information. Let's get to him also.
Okay, so then we'll recommend that this go to the planning commission and they'll set up the first Thursday in April. And we'll keep this item in committee and end this meeting at 8:34. Maria, you're up.
Okay, great.
Go ahead, Maria.
Oh, no, I was just going to call Legislation and Welfare Committee to order at 8:34. And the first thing we're going to talk about is Chapter 1115, the Flood Damage Reduction Ordinance. And I know, Ray, you had some things to share.
Yes, I've been working with Pete Formica on this, and it needs some changes on that. And I think everybody had gotten the information that I sent out. And that's right. I excuse me. I would like to have Pete chime in on this. Go ahead, Pete.
Unmute. Thank you. Yeah, this is it's pretty much a standard ordinance that the Ohio EPA and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources has sent out to every community, more focused on coastal communities, but still, because at first I looked at it and said, oh, this is about Timberlake and East Lake and Willoughby. You know, we don't have, because it adds in a what's called a like a lake zone. It's a new category in the FEMA process, and but still, then looking at it and talking to the people from ODNR, they said, no, yeah, we get that it's focused towards that, but there's some other updates in here for other non-coastal communities. So they had a base or a model ordinance that I got a hold of, and I went through it and compared it to our current ordinance. And I was able to see each and everything that they added in, and it's all just, sorry, Steve and Scott, a lot of legalese in there about floodplain, stuff, and really nothing that's ground shattering for the city of Wickliffe. A couple of things that were optional, that were like more restrictive to building and things, I took out. I honestly said, why do we need this? The government's got too much control, in my opinion, as it is. And if it wasn't mandatory, I didn't include it. it wasn't like he was gonna kill people or save the frogs or anything like that. So I just nixed it. And I think, did I send a copy of like the markup to everybody of what I actually changed from the original ordinance? Or if not, I have a copy of it right here. I could send to everybody to look at if you'd like. But it's basically shows every, definition that was corrected or everything in from the model. And they said, okay, yeah, that's good. Flood proofing was added, just a new added definition. And it's just a whole bunch of little things like that, really. I can go through each one of them if you want, if you got a few hours.
It's just a housekeeping measure from the EPA.
Good
That's basically
word.
what it is.
Yeah. And it has to be passed. We can't pass it yet. What we have to do is say, okay, Pete, this is good. Then I need to send it to ODNR, have them review it, and then they'll send it back to us saying, okay, council, you can pass this now. So that's the procedure here. So it's not like we need to get this on council's agenda next week, but if I can get you guys your buy-in to say, okay, send it off to ODNR, let them review it. Hopefully they'll be able to, see that I really didn't make any major changes. I just didn't go with some of the restrictive options that were optional. They should be able to send it back to us and saying, thumbs up, go ahead and get it on your agenda to pass. And that all has to happen before May.
And I'd like to add that Pete did send this to me quite some time ago. I looked all through it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, but our last ordinance or our current ordinance, that was based off of the model ordinance as well too.
Yes,
So
that's why it's very similar. Like I said, they just added a bunch of definitions and similar criteria. Right.
Randy?
Well, if Pete thinks it's ready to go, then I make a motion, we just let Pete send it to the ODNR and have them check it.
Okay, so I totally agree with you. So let's take a vote. Everybody agree with that?
You're on mute, Ed.
Yeah.
We're in a committee meeting. We don't do motions and stuff. We'll
Oh,
have a council meeting. Once you recommend it at the council meeting. So whenever Maria reads this out in the committee meeting, we can make a motion right after she reads this report.
Right. I think we feel pretty good about accepting this and putting it on the council meeting. We have to take it to council first, right? And tell them
Well, we don't need passage of council. We just, if I can get a consensus
right here.
Here, I'll forward it to ODNR saying this is what council is reviewing at this time. Please review this. It's not like we're voting on it.
All right, good. And after they give you the blessing, then we can bring it to council.
Right. That's what I need.
Everybody agree with us just letting him send it to ODNR? Everybody?
Yes. Gotcha.
All right. So then, okay, let Pete send it, and I can take it out of committee now, right?
I'll mute myself. Yeah, you can report it out of committee when you read your minutes, for sure.
Okay. All right, thank you, Pete. Thank you, Ray. Okay, so then the next quick point we have is the site and grading plan fees.
Thank you. It's been a little bit of a struggle for myself and Pete on site and grading plan fees. A person, an engineer or an architect will come for us for planning commission. We do the base fee and we'd go back and forth with planning commission requirements, Pete and myself. And we go back and forth so many times that Pete's spending more time than he should. And I have to ask the applicant for more money all the time. So that's why this is just a fee that it's like a deposit. We work it out of the deposit. If we don't use all the money, we send it back. Most time we're over the deposit. So that's why I asked for an increase in all.
If I could speak too, for planning, this is the same for planning commission and site and grading plans. It's not always that we're over on these things. We just did a site, a plan for Eric's Landscaping over on Clayton. The engineer knew what the hell he was doing, so I got a set of plans that make sense. We give them a checklist. Say, here, put all this stuff on the plans. Half the times they don't do it, and we're like fighting, going back and forth to get it, right, so that planning commission doesn't scratch their head saying, what the heck's going on? And when you get those kinds of architects or engineers, yeah, we go over the budget or over that deposit amount. When we get a good engineer that knows what the hell they're doing, excuse my French, we don't go over the deposit. It's the same thing with the site plan. If I get a site plan from a certain engineer, I'll look at it and say, oh, here we go. I might as well start requesting for the extra now, because at other times, we can knock it out.
So Pete, Ray and Pete, what you're saying is you want to increase the deposit fee, or?
Yes,
Okay, so what do you want to increase it by?
you should have that in front of you.
I know, I just don't have it in front of me right this second.
Oh, okay. Like the site and grading for a residential single family is 600.
There's a whole schedule. Okay, that's right.
There's a whole schedule if I give it to you.
I'll just
Go
say
ahead.
you are looking to increase fees.
Okay, I'll get that. You should have had a copy, but I'll get it to
Yeah,
you.
I have a copy. I just don't have it.
Okay, all right.
All right, so you're looking for permission to increase, and you want us to vote on whether you should increase the fees? Is that what our?
The
vote-
deposit fees, yes.
Deposit fees, okay.
I guess what you want to know is if does anybody have any objections to us increasing the deposit fee? If nobody really has any objection, then the committee recommends it to council that we do so.
No objections.
No objection.
No objection.
And I have no objection, so I'm just gonna recommend the committee. And actually, recommend it, and then I can take it, report it out of committee.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you, guys, and then just. vote
Okay.
on one more thing. Your real estate settlement fees.
The last one is that erosion and sediment control fees. This is a Lake County Soil and Water used to do this for our city. Now we are doing this in-house with CT. This is just a plan review fee that we set up. And it is a base fee that we have, and if it goes over, there's language in here where we could add to it. Let me go over this a little bit with you, how it works. When somebody does a new house or say like Eric's Landscaping, or when they build a new building, they have to give myself and Pete an erosion and settlement control plan for the EPA. And there's each time it rains, we'd have to go and look at it all the time. So we're setting it up in-house. One thing, it'll save us money. City will save money on this. We won't have to pay them. It goes directly to the cost of the applicants. And it's, I think, does everybody have this in front of them? Gave it to Sandy to send out to everybody. So Pete, you want to mention anything?
Not really. There's two phases, I guess, to this whole thing. One is the plan review, and then the other would be the site inspection. And we left the site inspection part wide open to say, look, we're going to estimate, a deposit amount and charge as needed. I mean, if a contractor comes in and gets the job done in 6 months, builds a house in 6 months, get it out, they plant the grass, it's all good. We don't have to keep looking at the site. We got something like on the corner of 291st and Euclid that hasn't been finished in 5 years. And we go check it every, not every time it rains, but every time we have a substantial rainstorm, those bills are going to add up for them, unfortunately. But we've got to follow, our city ordinances say we need to have this inspected, so many times and at different rain events. And we had Lake County Soil and Water doing that, and we chose to go in a different direction. So we're going to provide that service and be able to, and have to actually charge the the developer or the, you know, the property owner for that work.
That's, any questions?
Okay, so we need to decide whether, it looks like you've already made the decision that you're going to be taking this over, right?
Yes, the mayor sent a letter to them that we are not using their service.
Okay, so you're taking it over, and so you're asking our opinion on the fees or on?
Well, the ordinance is gonna have to be written up or revised to address it, but the way we wrote this, Ray and I got together on that, and we emulated the site and grading plan ordinance so that, Scott, so that we can obviously modify our ordinance, but we wanted to set up the procedure of what's gonna, you know, how things are gonna happen with projects that are up and coming. We've got a couple new house plans coming in, and we need to be able to at least have council's buy-in on this so that we can, you know, not hold them up. The school, you know, even doing inspection there and or the reviewing their site plan or their erosion control plan.
This would be council person Soloto. This would be a brand new ordinance. We don't have anything like this on the book. So basically I would adopt exactly that paper in front of you into ordinance form. And this would be a new ordinance with a new number in our ordinances.
So if the committee agrees or has had an objection, you report out that that we would recommend to council that he authorize the law director to create an ordinance with these erosion and sediment control plan fees. Maria, which if you have more questions after this, we can go over that, but you're just gonna be authorizing the law director if that's what the committee, you know, to draw up the ordinance.
Yep. So how do we feel? Can we authorize? Oh, go ahead, Randy.
Pete, so what you're trying to say is instead of Lake County Water and getting the money, the city of Wickliffe would retain, this would money that we would collect?
County Soil and Water operated on the city of Wycliffe for like an annual fee to provide the services. And then they charged each of the homeowners or developers fees for doing the development based on the acreage, based on, I quite don't know how they did it without a time factor, but they had another set schedule of fees for based, you know, to go to the developer. Basically, the city took out that, what was it, Ray? $1,000 a year or something?
$3,500.
$3,500. You know, and then they would provide on-site inspections to all of the, you know, they go out and canvass the city with all their list of things until they were completed. That was the inspection part. The plan review part was also, you know, making sure that they had shown their silt fences and all their sedimentation basins and things like that, so that it would be protected soil from eroding.
So you'll be doing the inspections instead?
Either me or one of my assistants.
Okay.
So that it would be less expensive.
Yes, Ed.
So, thank you, Maria. Just so we know, these numbers that you got, are they a reflection of what Lake County would normally charge, or do we have an idea? Do we, somewhere in the middle? Just out of curiosity, I mean, do you guys, you know?
Actually, when we calculated this out, Ed, we are cheaper on our fees than this, if you throw in the other monies that they get from this.
Okay.
I don't have that in front of me, but that's the way we made this up.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we did some kind of market research to see how we were compared to what the resident would have paid. We're not gouging the residents that actually were offering at probably a better rate or similar rate.
No objection.
I guess I have a question.
Yes.
I often wonder, now that we're taking on this responsibility, are we liable in any which way if something's not done right? Or if we don't see something right, we're not going to be in the trick bag of being sued?
I don't think we're any more liable, Mr. Bogo, than we were before. I mean, basically, we had Lake County Soil and Water was our inspector slash and the city, more so Ray was the enforcer. If there was a problem, they would they write a letter to the resident, and if they didn't resolve it, they would write a letter to or call us and say, hey, this guy's not putting his grass seed in, or he's not keeping up with this, and then it would be up to Ray to kind of drop the hand.
Okay. Right, we're just bypassing a middleman.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so do we all agree that we should?
I do.
This?
I do.
Agreed.
All right, so then, I guess that we would just.
Thank you.
So we're gonna authorize the law director to create an ordinance.
Yeah, just to confirm that you're gonna do that for both the other one for the site and grading plan one, you're gonna to modify it, and then this one will be authorizing to create an ordinance. So the one we talked about,
The prior one would be to amend the ordinance, and this one, like you said, you're correct, Council President, to create legislation. The other one would be to amend legislation.
Okay, perfect. All right. I think we're all set then. And we're gonna end the meeting at 6:53. I mean,
8:53.
Only it were 6:53, but it's 8:50.
Are you on mountain time? All right,
Thanks, guys.
thank you. See you guys Monday.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Great one, guys.
Bye-bye.
Leave.